Hey everyone, I am excited to announce the alpha or beta release of the admin UI for Ash Framework. And I wanted to take you through a little demo of how you might sort of use it for quick prototyping of building your application. And the other big use case for it would be using it to actually administer your application that you've deployed, uh, actually as an admin interface for your actual data. So what I'd like to show here is I've made this little uh, basic Ash and Phoenix application. I've created some simple resources. I've got an accounts API that just has the user resource. And the user resource here is really simple. It's just got an email, first name, last name, that kind of thing. And I've also got a tweets API. And here you can see that it has a tweet and a user. And so this user is the user from this context here. You generally don't share resources, and you can't, even though at some point we may sort of make that possible. But so you create a copy of it, a copy of that resource that just has the stuff relevant to its usage in this context, right? And then we have a tweet, which is very simple. It's got the text. So tweet belongs to a user, and a user has many tweets, right? So simple stuff. And the first thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to generate migrations. So you could handwrite migrations, right, with like a mix ecto.gen.migration, that type of thing. But Ash Postgres, the data layer for these resources, has a migration generator, which figures out, what you need to make your migrations. So, and if you run it again, it uses the snapshots from your last migration, so from your last resource. So it should, it'll be able to figure out what needs to change from iteration to iteration. So in this case, you can see if we look at our repo module that we have an Ash Postgres repo, and we have these installed extensions. Um, and so you can see that it actually made a migration to create those extensions. And if we look at our resource migration, migrate resources here, you can see that it created our users table and it created our tweets table. So we can go ahead and run these migrations. It's a good practice to review these after it creates them, right? Because they are making changes to your data. And then we can go ahead and start the service. So in our router here, we've set the admin UI up like this. So you see ash admin /admin, right? So now if we go to /admin here, we've got our two APIs to choose from. So we'll go ahead and go into users. We can go and try to read some data, and there isn't any, so let's go ahead and make some. And now you can see we've read some data. So, and this will also show up over here in tweets user, right? So this, you can see this, they're both reading from the same table under the hood. However, the tweets one has no create actions, right? So this is a read-only resource. So let's go ahead and I'll show you how you might use this to sort of prototype some changes that you're making, or to sort of build your application without having to necessarily build a UI right from the get-go, that kind of thing. So first, I guess I'll talk a little bit about what makes the admin UI for Ash special. A lot of admin UIs are typically focused around editing the data under the hood, right? So they give you like access to edit essentially the database table, and you kind of lose some of the context around what actions are available in your system, and or you end up sort of rewriting things that your system does in order to put them into an admin interface, right? So that you can do them in your admin interface, or that you can use it in your actual code, that kind of thing. So with Ash, because everything is centered around resource actions, you kind of get that for free. So I'll show you what I mean here. We'll go ahead and let's take a look at the user resource. Let's close some of this stuff here. Okay, user. Not this one. Take a look at this user. Okay, so we can already kind of see that we'd likely want a register action, right? So I'm not going to build in authentication here, but we'll just kind of fake it for the purpose of making these actions that we want here. But so let's go ahead and make an action called register, and we'll go ahead and we'll probably want an argument that takes the password. You need to send this, so say allow no false, and we'll probably want another one that is the confirm of the password. Okay, so let's just say, okay, we know we want the password when we register. And there's one other thing that we should do here. This is something that I just generally like to do is when you create an action, you actually overwrite the default create action, right? And I like to have that default create action here, primary true, as a primary action, which means that like it's the default create that's going to be used. So if Ash needs to create one of these under the hood, either for relationship changes that it's making or something like that, it would use this primary action. And it's useful to have this in your admin UI. So you can do that, essentially just edit the resource directly without having to pick, use some pre-existing action. So if we reload our page here, let's take a look. User create. All right, let's save this. I think I saved that. Yeah. Okay. So now you can see we can select our register action, and our arguments are showing up as input. And so we can kind of see this and realize like, okay, this action actually accepts more data than it should, right? We don't want to take first name and last name when they register. So we can go over here and we can say that this just accepts email. You don't have to put arguments in the accept list because they're specific to that action, so they're naturally accepted. And cool. So now you can see email, password, and confirm password. So one of the things that you might want, right? You see if we try to create one of these, let's do it. That these can be different. You're not getting any form validation that they're different, and it would let you create one if you did, right? So let's go ahead and add a validation. We can add this is an action specific validation. So we'll say validate, and we can use a built-in one called confirm. So we say validate password against confirm password, or confirm the password against the confirm password. And so now if we refresh our dashboard, so you can see like, okay, now these need to match, right? So you can see we can kind of easily test out our validations and our rules, that kind of stuff, just using the admin UI itself. And it's a very quick development cycle when you're working locally. So let's go ahead and give these guys the password. Cool, easy peasy. So let's go ahead and we can do a couple more changes here so you can see how you might end up prototyping stuff. So one thing is we probably want to have a special action that we expose over our APIs or put in our forms that doesn't it's an update action just to update their profile information, right? So if they want to change their email, we probably we got to hook up email confirmations and that sort of stuff. But if they want to change their first and last name, then it's fine, right? That doesn't matter. So we'll create our update action, call it maybe update profile, and this one will just accept first name, last name. Okay. And just for consistency, I'll create my primary action here as well. Unique, oh yeah, this needs to be called update. Gotta have unique action names. Okay, so if I go to update, now you can see we can do this update profile action to just change the things that we want to change. But we do have this basic update that lets us change whatever we want as well. So when you're actually hooking this up, if you're using maybe AshJSON API or Ash GraphQL or something, you wouldn't hook up these primary actions to endpoints because they're just willy-nilly actions, right? You'd have an update profile, or you'd have a register, that kind of thing. But it can be very useful to have those actions, especially in the context of an admin dashboard. So let's go ahead and I'll show you one more thing we might customize. Let's go ahead and customize the, let's add a destroy action. Well, let's customize this by adding a soft delete. So first things first, we're going to add a deleted at attribute. It's going to be UTC date time usec. Okay. And then we're going to add a resource base filter here. So base filter just filters the whole table by some condition, right? So we'll say deleted at or is nil deleted at, right? So you have to have a nil deleted at to show up in this resource. And what we'll also do, because this shouldn't be editable by anybody really, right? This is managed under it. We can make this a private attribute. Okay, so now we have our base filter. Let's go ahead and make our archive. So we have we'll call it archive here. We'll leave our default destroy action intact, right? So we can actually delete data if we want to. But in our archive one, we will mark it as soft, which basically says, hey, actually route this destroy action through the update logic that exists. Not it's not actually going to delete anything from the data layer. And then we'll go ahead and we'll add a change to this. So a change, it's kind of like a plug almost for your actions. You can do a bunch of changes in here, and they'll be sort of piped through your changes where you get access to the change set, kind of like you get access to the con in a plug. And so here we'll use a built-in change called set attribute that we can use to set the deleted at attribute to a zero argument function datetime dot utc now. Okay, so now if we update this, we need to actually add this deleted at column. So first we will generate the migrations that do that. And then we will migrate. Okay, so now if we pull this up and we go to, let's take a look at our data here. We can hit this delete button to go in here, and we can select which one do we want, right? So I'll show you here first. If I select destroy, that actually issued a delete query, right? And if I go here and I go to archive, and I hit that button, so you can see here what was actually issued was an update statement that tells it to set deleted at, right? So and now that data does not show up here in our users list. So here we've customized, each of the various action types aside from reads. And you can see that it's pretty quick to get feedback on what you're building and to actually use those things here in the admin UI. So I'll show a couple more quick things that I think are interesting. Let's see. We'll go ahead and let's add a read action. So we say read. We'll add our primary. Okay. Now let's add. Let's see. We will do let's call it by email. This takes an email argument. You have to give it to us. And then we will add a filter to this read action. And this filter we can use this expr helper to build an Ash query expression here inline in the resource. And we want to just say email equals, and then we use this syntax, arg email, to access the argument, right? So this is just building a template that's going to be used later. This doesn't really do much. But this does let us use arguments in filter expressions that are attached to the read action. So let's go ahead and do that. So now you'll see that when we read, we have multiple choices here, right? And so because this accepts an argument, it doesn't do anything. It has to, it wants us to give it an email. So let's actually see what do we have. We have nothing. Let's make one. Make one here. We'll make Zach at foo.com. Okay. So now let's go ahead and search for Zach at foo.com. So we can go to by email, and look at that. So I guess it trimmed it anyway. But so in this way, you can make read actions that are really, even if you're just making them for the admin UI itself for something useful, like maybe it's not used by your application. But what's nice about this is that this is simultaneously usable in your admin UI and can be exposed via an API or however it is that you're using your resources. So you get this portable logic. Let's go ahead and show off a little bit more while we're here. First things first, you'll notice if we go to our tweets user, that the one that we deleted that we archived is showing here, right? So we'll need to go to that user here. We'll say the other user, and we'll add a base filter here as well. And down here, attribute deleted at UTC datetime music private. Okay. So now if we refresh this, Okay, so now everything is consistent again. And so what you can see here is if I go to tweet, for example, and I go to create one, you see it has this unload button for this for the user relationship. This to one relationships are just loaded by default, but if there was a to many relationship that you were editing, um, you could you would have to load it before it showed up. But so let's say we want to make a tweet for a user, right? Let's go ahead and get a user ID. Let's go create a tweet for a user. Say there. But it's kind of interesting. This is a little tiny text field, right? Which is pretty annoying. So let's actually start by fixing that. Go ahead and take a look at our tweet resource, and we will use the Ash admin. It offers a resource extension that lets you configure how this behaves in the admin UI. So we can say field text type long text. Cool. So now you can see with that configuration that we actually get a long text field here. So we can go ahead and edit the user ID, and then we'll give it here a big, here is an awesome tweet. Cool. So we associated it with the user, and we also edited the data. So I mean, probably the first thing we're all thinking, because it's editing a tweet, is like, where's the character limit? Which they don't have anymore, but this is a classic demo, right? But you can just make an arbitrarily long tweet, and that'll cause us problems. So let's go ahead and implement that. It's updated, so I don't have to deal with that. And we'll go ahead down to string, say max length. I actually forget what the max length for a tweet was when there was 144, I think. So, oh, sorry, I did this wrong. You have to say constraints max length 44. So now if we go into update this tweet, we try to make it too long. Yeah, so length must be less than or equal to 44. So, and then we don't hold that as same either. Cool. So easy peasy. And you can see we were able to manage the related data here as well. Now, because the user here is read only, we just have the ability to sort of read these. But you can see we can actually load their related data from the show page for it. So it can be a really easy way to kind of go around and view your data, and you can hop around too. You can go show that resource now, and the user is automatically loaded because it's a 2-1 relationship, so it's down here. But let's go ahead and I'll show you one more useful. Actually, I guess we got a couple more things on the docket here. This video is getting longer than I expected. But let's go ahead and first I will show you managing related data in a little bit more of a sort of rich way. So let's say you wanted to be able to like fully manipulate a user's tweets directly here, right? So let's go ahead and go to our tweet. Let's say our user resource. So you can see we're only implementing we're saying only have the read default action because we don't want any of the other defaults, because this is kind of a read-only resource. But we can actually add an update action because we're just going to be updating related data. So you'll see what I mean here. We'll just call this update. And in this action, we will accept just the tweets relationship. And then we have to let the admin UI know about the ability to edit this. So I already added the admin resource extension here. So admin do, and we will say form do, and I think it's manage related. Let's see, manage related. I actually forget what I call this. So give me 1 second to look up the name of this option. Yeah, it's just manage related. Okay, cool. So we say these relationships are available for like sort of full management of the related data in the form here. So if we refresh this page, we go down to tweets. Shouldn't have this update or this create button, so I'll have to fix that after this video. But if we go in, oh no, I'm wrong. Here we go. User is what I'm talking about. So we go to read a user, and there should be an update here. Let's go ahead and refresh. file. Maybe that has something to do with it. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so we can go update this user, and you can see that we can actually manage their tweets inline, right? So this actually lets us edit their full list of tweets inline. So this isn't something you'd want to turn on for like really high cardinality relationships, because you'd sort of load everything up into the admin UI, right? But if you've got just like a 1 to 20 or 30 even, right, it should be fine to manage here. And so I can like add a tweet for this user right here in line. And now if we load their tweets, you can see I've managed that related data here alongside. So there are some features as well that I think are pretty cool. Specifically, if you have any multi-tenant resources, I'll just fake it so you can see what the UI for that would be. But let's say I had multi-tenancy strategy attribute. So this attribute-based multi-tenancy. You can read more about multi-tenancy if you're not familiar with it. There's stuff in the guides there. But let's just for giggles here, we'll say it's multi-tenant on first name, which makes literally no sense, but we'll just do it anyway. So you can see now when you have multi-tenant resources, oh yeah, it's erroring because we have to give it a tenant, right? But you can configure the tenant to be like foobar, for example, here, and that sets the tenant, right? So let's go ahead and take that out, get rid of that multi-tenancy. And it works for Postgres schema-based multi-tenancy as well if you're using Ash Postgres, which probably everybody who's watching this video is. So the other nice thing is let's go ahead and let's actually add a simple authorization rule in here real quick. This could go forever, but I'll just make it easy. We'll add the Ash policy authorizer to here, and we're going to make a really simple policy. And again, probably not the best place to go over exactly what policies are, but there's some documentation in Ash policy authorizer that can kind of help you understand that. So let's go ahead and say for read actions, we'll say forbid. We'll say authorize if related to actor by user, right? So it's good if it relates to actor by user. So what this is saying is that you can read the tweets that you made, right? And like this is obviously not sufficient for like a real application, but we can just kind of start with a really simple policy here. And so then what we also want to do is we want to say, which of these resources can be used, can like sort of be logged in as, could be an actor, right? And so for this one, we'll say that it's this user resource here. And so you do that by modifying you add this, you say admin do, and then you say that this can be an actor, right? So now when we run this, you can see it says, gives us this option to set a user. And so it knows to take us over here to our users. We could go find a user that we want. So, in our example, we could go by email and find the one that we wanted. And then you can click this little key and it will set that as the user that you currently are, right? So for kind of usability reasons, even though this isn't the world's best UX, but for usability reasons, it doesn't just automatically start authorizing and like having that user be the context, because you probably want to like navigate to the action you want to test and all that sort of stuff. So by default, it's paused, and you can hit this little play button to actually, set that user as the actor. Now it doesn't do anything now because you also would want to turn on authorization, right? They're kind of two separate things. You might have action-specific, changes that use the current user but aren't based on authorization, and so you want the ability to toggle them separately, like turn authorization on and turn whether or not I'm being this user on or off. So if we go over to our tweets resource, let's go ahead. We are this user. Okay, so there's no tweets right now by a different user. So let's go ahead and make one. So we'll use this user here. We can actually just edit this user and add some tweets for it. Another one. Okay. So now if we go to tweets and we go ahead and read that data, you can see there's 4 tweets here. And those tweets, 2 of them are for this user that we're being, and 2 of them are for a different user. So if I hit play, nothing happens yet because we're not authorized. It means we're not running the policies on the resource. But then if I toggle that, you can see that I automatically only see data scoped to my policies, right? And so in this way, you can actually test your authorization rules out as well, right? You can go to an action, say, if I'm this user and I go to ask for what are the tweets that I can see, what do I see? What gets shown? I had to edit this part out because my dog wouldn't stop barking, so I figured I'd include him in this demo. All right, moving on. We can even test, policies for our forms or for our, create and update actions, right? We can say something like action type create, authorize if, let's see, relating to actor, user, right? So for some reason I'm losing some of the fancy formatting here, but that's fine. It shouldn't require these parentheses. But you can see that you can only create a tweet if you are making it for yourself, right? You can't make a tweet for somebody else, right? Which, if you're building something in maybe live view, that sort of thing doesn't necessarily matter because it wouldn't be possible. But if you're building an API, for example, you may have, you may accept the user ID, for example, and so you'd want to have a policy like this. So if we look at, if we go to create this now, let's go ahead and look at a user. It is not us. Let's see this person. Let's go ahead and make a tweet for them, and you'll see that we get a forbidden error. Right. So there's still some work that needs to be done on potentially like printing out authorization failure explanations. Right now, that's not a priority because you generally don't want to share that information. You could kind of get it by turning on some debug log stuff. But yeah, for now, it's just going to say forbidden. But here, yeah, you can see we were able to test our authorization rules directly in the admin UI without really having to think too hard about it. It was all just made available to us here, and we can test our authorization. Um, it's a pretty useful system. So I hope you guys like it, and I hope it's useful. Thanks.